Welcome to my channel, Dr. John Witney Pettit. For those who don't remember you or don't know you, we already did an interview before. But for those who don't know you or don't remember you, I would like to introduce you, if you don't mind and if you allow me. First of all, most welcome. It's a deep honor for me to be with you here, especially in Dakini Day. But it's a big honor to be again in front of you and have the good merits to again do some interview with you. I really feel very, very happy, Dr. John. So for those who don't know, Dr. John Witney Pettit. Dr. John has been a student of Buddhism and Tibetan and Sanskrit languages since the early 80s and studied with the many great teachers from various traditions, most notably with His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. John holds advanced degrees in religion and Buddhist studies from Harvard and a PhD from Columbia University. He spent many years researching the rites of Mipam Rinpoche, and he published his dissertations as Mipam Beacon of Certainty. And since 2005, he has translated Tibetan commentaries and carried out extensive research on the topic of Buddha nature, which is the subject of a volume that was published by the Institute of Tibetan Classics. In addition to translating many unpublished liturgies and comments related to practice, he has logged countless hours browsing prophetic manuals in the treasure terma literature and browsed avidly the fine print of various sadhanas, rituals, and mashgril, I don't know if I said well, commentaries amongst the collected works of Tibetan authors. So, welcome, Dr. John Witney Pettit. It's an honor to have you as.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sonia. I'm very happy to be here again.
Just Sonia, please.
Okay, Sonia, and then just John. No need for Dr.
No, Dr. John. Dr. John Witney Pettit, please. A great schooler, and for me, a wonderful translator. You know very well, I have a big debt with you for translation. We will not mention here. It doesn't matter at all, right? So I don't know if you want to say something to the people that are listening and seeing to us in this day and about the topic we are going to talk about, the Guhyagarbha Tantra. If you want to do some introduction, some small introduction about that, or if you really want to start immediately with the questions that I have to you, because I am one of the big fans of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, because as far as I know, it is known as the king of the Nyingma tradition tantras. Am I wrong?
It is actually the single most important tantra in the Nyingma tradition. And just one thing, it's not so much a matter of saying, but especially because it is a special day, a holiday, Dakini Day. I'm just showing, I'm not showing to show off because it's just a minimal effort to make a few nice offerings. This reliquary here has some relics of Longchenpa, and this one here has the relics of the previous Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. And these are the 5 sense offerings, the offerings for touch, the offerings for smell, the offerings for taste, the offerings of sound, and the offerings of mind, and so on. So these are just the 5 sense offerings. So symbolically, I'm offering those to the triple gem and to the Lama, the Yidam, and the Dakinis. And may all be auspicious. And thank you, anyone who is listening live or listening to the recording later on. Thank you, and welcome all of you.
Wow. This was not in the program. I'm
No, it wasn't.
overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed.
No,
Thank you
it's
so
just
much. Really, I
it's
was
just no,
wow.
it's a minimal gesture on my part, but it seems appropriate because after all, we're talking about tantra, and
Yes.
and the subject of so-called tantric practice. There are many different levels and angles of understanding from the Buddhist side and also from outside the Buddhist tradition per se. But in
Yeah.
all of these different interpretations of the meaning of the word tantra in general, it has something to do with the human body and the experience of life as ordinary human beings. That is the starting point of the path, and the life of the senses. I don't mean the indulgence of the senses, but just having senses and sensory experiences, as well as the emotions of attachment and aversion and so on that go along with those sense experiences. These are the basic material of our being, and the purpose of tantra is to make use of that basic material. And so, rather than reject it, we embrace it and we make use of it skillfully. This is the basic approach of Buddhism generally, not only of so-called Tantra, but even at the most basic level of Buddhism, people make use of their material senses. Every tradition of Buddhism makes use of offerings. The offering of flowers, for example, to a statue of the Buddha is a wonderful way that even a simpleton, a person who can't read or write, who knows nothing, can gain merit and ultimately reach nirvana just by offering flowers to the Buddha. So we make all these offerings, offerings of water, offerings of perfume, of incense, food, sound, and also the offering of wisdom itself. We make use of these offerings relating to our 5 or 6 senses as a way of stabilizing and progressing on the path.
That is absolutely true. So you really inspired me to also make an offering to our guests and share with them. And since we are talking about the king of the tantras in the Nyingma tradition, and you mentioned, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, that is so special to me. But there is also somebody that is very special to me, and I would like to share with all. And since it's Dakini Day, I would like also to share, as you share your shrine, I will share 2 very special things that I dedicate my offerings, and I did so today in Dakini Day, and I would like to share with all our viewers because it's a huge, huge bless. This is Vajrayogini.
Oh, very nice.
This Vajrayogini is old style. It came directly to me from Asura Cave, and it's filled with Shatta Rinpoche hair. Happy Dakini Day to all of
Thank
you.
you, thank you.
And of course, this is Shatta Rinpoche.
Oh, Chato Rinpoche. Yes, thank you.
And this is very special. It was offered to me from my dear Semo Saraswati Rinpoche.
More clearly.
I don't know. Do you see?
Yes, I can see more clearly. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Good.
This was a very special statue. So
Oh, thank you.
here
I'm sure
I
it has so
request the
many.
blessings from Chatral and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and all the great Nyingma teachers and yogis from the past, present, and future, and also from the great Dakinis.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. So
Well,
let's start.
we can consider that by showing these offerings. Also, we're making a mandala offering, and particularly if anyone listening who has already empowerment or instruction in the practice of secret mantra Vajrayana, or even if you do not, you can imagine, and this is the style of Vajrayogini practice,
Yes.
that in your body you have all of the holy places on earth, Bodh Gaya and Bodha, and the 32 special
Maratika.
the special Shakti Peeths or Dakini gathering places, including Maratika and so on. And you can imagine that just by by being present here today and listening with the good motivation of wishing the benefit and Buddhahood for all sentient beings, that we are making a mandala offering. That means, in order to even just to discuss or mention the name of Tantra and Guhyagarbha Tantra, we should imagine that we're offering all that is best in the universe, and actually everything, all the best things in the universe are already contained in ourselves. So our physical presence can be that mandala offering.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. So with these big, huge blessings from your side and my side, both crossed in a certain point, I will start the questions and our talk about the Guhyagarbha Tantra. Is that
very good?
Okay.
Very good.
Here we go. Shall we go?
Yes, let's go.
Very well. So please explain to us. I'm sure a few know, a few that are seeing us, they know, but I'm sure many don't know. What is the meaning of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, Dr. John?
Okay, well, thank you. So I just, there was a slight pause in our bandwidth, and I take that as a slight admonition from the Dakinis to be very careful what to say and how to approach this subject, because this really, is not something that could be easily understood even by very, very expert, very seasoned practitioners. Even the most highly trained scholars and meditators, most of us, I should say, we're not actually capable of fully practicing what is taught in the Guhyagarbha Tantra. Really only the Buddha and very advanced bodhisattvas, very advanced yogis could actually practice properly everything that is taught in the Guhyagarbha. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn something from it. And it also doesn't mean that we can't say anything publicly about it, but to say anything, we have to approach with the proper respect and proper motivation. So this is why I wanted to show the offerings that I made, and also to mention the idea of mandala offering, and also mention the precious bodhicitta, the altruistic aspiration. If these can motivate or inspire us at this moment, then we can actually have a conversation here about the Guhyagarbha Tantra. So I just wanted to, with that proviso, I wanted to begin. So, your first question is, what is the meaning of the Guhyagarbha Tantra? And I didn't do any special research to answer this question, but I did think about it, and I was asking myself, what is the most appropriate way to summarize the significance of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. First of all, as you mentioned before, this is the most important tantra in the Nyingma tradition, and there's a reason why it is the most important tantra. First of all, because the quintessential viewpoint of the Guhyagarbha Tantra is the same as the Great Perfection or Dzogchen Ati Yoga. That is the definitive viewpoint, and in particular, the viewpoint or the teaching of the Guhyagarbha Tantra relates to approaching the Great Perfection teachings or Dzogchen teachings through the symbolism and methods of the Mahayoga Tantras. So the Mahayoga Tantras, those who are practicing in Tibetan Buddhism nowadays would be familiar with the Mahayoga point of view, for example, through the practice of Vajrayana. Vajrayana is a quintessential deity of the Mahayoga class. So all of the complex methods and symbolism, especially of the wrathful deity mandalas, these belong to the class of Mahayoga within the Nyingma tradition. So this tantra is the quintessential teaching that shows the way to the great perfection through the use of the methods and empowerments that belong to Mahayoga. So that's one level of concise explanation.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful because, you know, by starting our small talk interview, we pick and present and show and share with all Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and Shatha Rinpoche that were, in my humble opinion, great Dzogchen masters. So I'm very happy with this auspicious coincidence also. So thank you so much for clarifying that and explaining also that this is one of the highest, let's say so, tantras, but it's not impossible to talk about these highest tantras with naturality, but it doesn't mean this fit to everybody without proper guidance and proper knowledge, correct? So my second
Correct.
question is, who wrote this tantra?
Well, I wanted to say just a little more about the
Please.
meaning of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, and then the question of authorship is what we call somewhat moot or somewhat superfluous, but I'll come back to that in a moment.
Of course, please.
And so, but what I wanted to say additionally regarding the Guhyagarbha Tantra, and this is just to clear up any misknowledge or lack of understanding that people will have when they think, oh, the Guhyagarbha Tantra, I want to know about the Guhyagarbha Tantra. First, there are two things that one should have in order to read the Guhyagarbha Tantra in translation or to study its commentaries. The first is this is just what I have heard from lamas of the lineage, and it's not based on any wrathful deities. So in my case, I was able to receive that empowerment once from His Holiness Paino Rinpoche, according to the tradition of Karma Lingpa. That's also in connection with the so-called Tibetan Book of the Dead, which mentions the peaceful and wrathful deities of the Bardo, of the intermediate state. So that empowerment is considered necessary, either from the Karma Lingpa side or from one of the other lineages of transmission. And that relates above all to the deity Vajrasattva. So most people who know something about Tibetan Buddhism are familiar with the practice or the image of Vajrasattva. So, but there's a special form of empowerment coming from the tradition of Karma Lingpa or from other great Tertons, and especially the Mindraling tradition, where Vajrasattva and the 100 deities, peaceful and wrathful deities, are introduced through the media of empowerment. This is considered to be like a minimum requirement for studying the Guhyagarbha Tantra. You might say that it substitutes for the empowerment of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. I'm not a scholar of this tantra, so I don't know if it has a special empowerment related more closely than that, but as a bare minimum requirement. So these days, most people who've spent many years following the Nyingma tradition will have received the equivalent empowerment to study the Guhyagarbha. And secondly, if you're fortunate enough, and amazingly, I was fortunate enough to hear the lung or the oral transmission of the Guhyagarbha Tantra together with one of its commentaries from a great teacher, Tukul Pema Wagyal Rinpoche. So it doesn't give me any special qualification to teach or to practice, but it's a great blessing. And anyone who can receive the lung or the reading transmission of the root tantra and one of its commentaries is a very fortunate person indeed. So if you have the empowerment, that you're qualified to read or to hear teachings about the Guhyagarbha. And by teachings, I don't mean my very cursory talk that I'm giving today. I mean actual teachings from a lineage holder.
Yes.
And in that connection, I just wanted to mention that several of the commentaries on the Guhyagarbha have been translated. The one that is published and available for people who want to read about it is Mipam Rinpoche's commentary. That's translated very, very well, I think, by Sangye Khandro and Lama Chönam, the great translator team. They're the the greatest translator team in the area of Nyingma Vajrayana these days. So, and their translations are authentic and reliable. So one can study Miban Rinpoche's commentary on the Guhyagarbha through that. So that's just a side note, actually. So now the question is, what is the meaning of the Guhyagarbha? And I just thought that to the limited extent that I'm able, to say something about the title. Supposedly, if you're really kind of a spiritual genius, like a 10th level bodhisattva, which obviously I'm not, but someone who's a very high level bodhisattva can understand the whole meaning of a text just by the title. I think that for the rest of us, we can understand a little bit about the general topic of the Guhyagarbha Tantra by looking at the actual title. So to begin, the name is Guhyagarbha Tantra, and the word Guhya here means secret or hidden, and here secret, of course, already I implied that this is a secret teaching. What is actually taught and practiced in relation to the Guhyagarbha can't be discussed here and now. That's one aspect of secrecy, and the reason is not because that there's something wrong with it, that there's something to be ashamed of or something to hide, but rather that when it comes to a very profound and special method or approach to attaining Buddhahood in this life, the profundity of the teaching means also there's a lot of potential for misunderstanding. One needs to understand the distinction between what is literally stated and what is actually intended by that statement. For example, not every statement can be taken literally, so this is one reason why the meaning of the Guhyagarbha is actually quite secret and quite hidden, because one must be able to interpret and understand the literal expression of the text, which is not easy to do. Normally that requires the commentary of a great master who has already reached the final stages of realization, and also it requires great practice and effort on one's own part. So these are reasons why the meaning of the real meaning, and also the details and the implications of the literal expression of the Tantra are basically obscure and hidden from our sight. We can't easily understand, but we might catch a glimpse of some of the important aspects just by, again, as I said, just by looking at the title. The second word is garbha, which is translated in various ways as seed or nucleus or essence, and so on. And this word garbha in Sanskrit, it comes from the Sanskrit verb grab, which means to hold or to grab, literally to grasp. And garbha also means embryo. It means embryo, and it also means womb. So the embryo here is actually refers, generally speaking, the word garbha refers to the Buddha nature. So it refers to the originally pure, already complete nature of Buddhahood that is the ground of our being. Actually, the essence of our existence is Buddhahood already. So that's the general meaning of garbha. So in a general Buddhist Mahayana sense, the Guhyagarbha, or secret nucleus, is nothing else besides our true nature. So that is actually the subject and the teaching of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. It is what that nature is, and also how to realize it.
Wonderful explanation, Dr. John. Thank you so much.
But one last point is this word Tantra. In Tibetan, the word for Tantra is Gyud. Gyud, or in the widely transliteration, rgyud. It sounds a lot like the word cause, which is rgyu, but actually it's with a final D, Gyud. And this word Gyud translates multiple words from Sanskrit, but there are two words in particular from Sanskrit that apply. Now, in this case, the word translated by Gyud is Tantra. And Tantra means a text, but it also means, in another interpretation, Gyud means continuum. In Sanskrit, the word is samtana. Samtana and Tantra both come from the same root, which is the verb tan. It means to extend, to stretch, or to weave, and to coalesce, to integrate, and so on. So, so this Tantra, you could say, is a tapestry of meaning that is not just an ordinary two-dimensional tapestry. It's a three-dimensional or four-dimensional or infinite-dimensional tapestry of meaning that has countless layers of interpretation and countless methods implicated within it. So here the word Tantra really should be understood something more like something like a hologram. You know, on a two-dimensional surface, a three-dimensional object can be encoded effectively. And if you have the keys and the methods for displaying what is encoded on that two-dimensional surface, then you can create a three-dimensional reality out of that. So in this case, the Tantra is the text, it's the letters, and it's the meaning attached to those letters, which under the right circumstances, that means with empowerment, transmission, and practice within a lineage of awakened teachers, of enlightened teachers, then the three-dimensional mandala, which is actually the original pure nature of our universe, can be manifest in the experience of an individual.
Wonderful. This is amazing, and it's really very deep, and very. It's not easy at all. I mean, you really have to go very deep into the practice to do this practice, and you really also need to have a lot of merits to receive the lung with the explanation of this kind of tantras. Correct?
Well, I think one needs a lot of merit, but even without very much merit, if one has a pure aspiration and knows how to find a qualified teacher, and one can approach any guru or lama who holds the transmission, and there are many actually who can give transmission or the empowerment. You know, some are better known or more famous than others. Some may be more highly realized than others. But if you approach a guru who holds the transmission with the right attitude and the right motivation, then even a person who has very little merit could potentially receive this transmission. There's no spiritual hierarchy that should limit anybody. The most humble and ignorant person in the world can receive this teaching if they can find the right teacher and approach them the right way.
Yes, that's the point. Find the right teacher and approach him the right way also. It's one of the questions. Find the right teacher is not so easy, but that is another topic, maybe another interview.
Yeah, indeed.
Anyway, so who wrote this Tantra? Sorry,
who wrote the Tantra? Well, no one actually knows, and unfortunately, because I didn't make the time to review Nippon Rinpoche's commentary. I can't give you any of the historical information, for example, who transmitted and who translated and so on. But in the actual Tantra itself, the teacher, I can't, I'm just glancing at the commentary here. I'm not seeing the actual name of the teacher. But the teacher is the Buddha, and we can say that the Buddha in the essential nature of Vajrasattva. but I'm not sure that that's the name that is used. Again, I apologize for my ignorance. But to really understand who taught a tantra like this, we have to refer, and we should understand that basically we can say that there are two aspects of Buddhahood manifesting in the universe as we know it, in the world as we know it. And by we, I mean us ordinary sentient beings, and also the way bodhisattvas or highly realized yogis understand it. That's the same universe, but the more highly realized beings have access to more information. Basically, they have more of a direct line. It's like the difference between having, 5 or 6 channels on your television and having the entire internet at your disposal. The ordinary point of view is just like having ordinary TV. It's full of junk, it's advertising, and most of it is complete nonsense and completely useless. It's hard to find anything really, truly spiritually meaningful on day-to-day television. But if you're an expert at using the internet for research or even for entertainment, then you can find very, very special sources of information. So similarly, yogis and otherwise highly realized individuals, Buddhas who live in celestial pure lands and so on, and bodhisattvas who live in those pure lands, they can access the real teaching and the real vast extent of information directly. So from their point of view, then there are the Buddhas who have arisen and who are known to exist in something like historical time. Our human historical time mostly just encompasses Buddha Shakyamuni and the traces of teachings left by the 4 Buddhas who appeared before him in this world system and in this so-called fortunate eon. Those are the Buddhas that we can refer to in our human historical timeline. In the cosmic historical timeline, that is the timeline that's visible by those great bodhisattvas or highly realized yogis who can directly perceive the past and the present and the future through their special abilities. Yes. Then there are the so-called cosmic Buddhas, but they also exist on somebody's timeline. They exist in terms of the past, the present, or the future, all of which are connected, intimately connected. And so the Buddhas of the 3 times, that includes the past, the present, and the future, they exist from a linear time perspective. They have arisen, they are arising now, or they will arise definitely at some point in the future. And so in the Buddhist wisdom point of view, all of those Buddhas exist basically in a single time, which is called the 4th time. The 4th time means timeless time. It's kind of outside of the conditioned reality of our physical and psychological universe. And according to the teaching of the Nyingma Tantras, the definitive teacher exists outside of our time. The greatest or the most primordial Buddha of all arose outside of anything that we can imagine as time itself. And that Buddha is usually referred to as Samantabhadra, or in Tibetan, Kuntu Zangpo. And then through the compassion that emanates from that timeless realm of enlightenment arises the other forms of Buddhas that we know as so-called historical Buddhas, or Buddhas who exist in historical time, as well as Buddhas that exist, the infinite Buddhas who exist in the cosmic time. So they arise actually, or they are possible because of the primordial fact of Buddhahood. So in this way of thinking, Buddhahood itself is outside of time. And when the teaching arises, like for example, the teaching of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, it's just an expression coming from that realm. It's coming from the realm of timeless awakening and emanating into this realm, in the aspect of one Buddha or another. So, who actually wrote down the Guhyagarbha Tantra in the human world for the first time is not important. It's kind of irrelevant in a way. I'm not sure that if there's even a tradition that specifies for sure who the first human teacher of the Guhyagarbha Tantra was. But it's actually not so important. The point of the Guhyagarbha Tantra is what it actually teaches. And the ultimate view of the Guhyagarbha Tantra is as more or less as I just expressed, which is that Buddhahood itself is outside of time. We, sentient beings who need to be liberated from a cyclic existence and achieve the same omniscient point of view as the Buddha, we are inside of time. But that's just an accident. It's just temporary. So as a temporary expedient, the Guhyagarbha Tantra has appeared. And the teacher of the Guhyagarbha Tantra is the pure form of the Buddha. Let's say, arbitrarily, we'll just say it's the Buddha Vajrasattva, or the Buddha Vajrasattva masquerading with a different name and a different form. But essentially, that is the teacher of the Guhyagarbha Tantra.
Thank you. Thank you.
So and then the human authorship, basically, as much as we can determine, it comes down through the great masters like Master Buddha Guya in particular, as well as Master Padmasambhava.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Amazing explanation, Dr. John. Thank you very much. I'm still digesting, so wonderful information and so well resumed and so clear.
Well,
I'm sure, man. I'm sure.
I have to admit that I'm making up for my lack of scholarly and practical knowledge here by appealing to the highest point of view, which is the point of view as taught in the teachings of the Great Perfection. But that is very relevant here for understanding the Guhyagarbha. We should to hear the teachings on Tantra generally, or this Tantra in particular, we should have transmission, a connection with a great master or great masters, great lama, great gurus who already realized the subject of the teachings. And then just at the level of faith and devotion, we can have a glimmer of understanding. Even if, like in my case, I have no real understanding or experience or practice of this Tantra. But on the other hand, I don't feel disconnected from it because I know that I'm very connected with those teachers that I'm devoted to.
Yes. Excellent. No, that's really the point. That's incredible. And I'm very happy because you explain it in such a simple way that I'm sure that people that never heard about this Tantra could understood who wrote this Tantra, which is not so easy to explain in such a simple way. So thank you so much for your clarity. And this explanation was brilliant. I confess I was not expecting, so I'm overwhelmed. Thank you. So I will pass to the next question, if you allow me. You don't have nothing else to say about the writer of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, because it's all very clear. Can I go to the next question?
Please, continue.
Okay, so let's go. What are the requisites to practice this Tantra, please? Please, in this question, I really request you to be very, very specific and even more clear than in the previous question. What are the requisites to practice this Tantra?
Well, I'm going to take your question. I'm going to specify to practice a part of this Tantra, rather than say practice all of this Tantra, because there's so many approaches that are implicit here. And after this question, we can approach. I can mention some of the, like for example, the 11 topics which comprise the teaching of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. I can enumerate those, but actually, any one of those topics might be the focus of a particular person's practice, and one wouldn't necessarily have to practice, a literal. In other words, the practice of this Tantra is accomplished through many, many, many different types of practice. not just different approaches. Like there's the Mahayoga approach, there's the Anuyoga approach, also which is implicit here, but not the main focus. And then there's the Hatha Yoga or Dzogchen approach. And then there's the approach which combines the Mahayoga and Hatha Yoga together, which actually is the particular emphasis of this tantra is Mahayoga, or which is the generation stage of deity practice, combined with the view and understanding of Hatha Yoga or Dzogchen, great perfection. So, in other words, who can practice this tantra is anyone who is able to use any of those approaches. That means, first of all, someone who's qualified to practice the inner tantras.
Yes.
And to practice the inner tantra again requires instruction and sadhana or methods of practice that apply to these 11 topics. We'll come back to those. So that's sort of the general answer: is one should have the capacity to practice according to the inner tantras. And I just wanted to mention something, and this is relevant coming from Mipam Rinpoche's interpretation. His commentary on the Guhyagarbha, by the way, is called the Chidon Osel Nyingpo, or the general meaning and essence of luminosity. So the general meaning of the Guhyagarbha Tantra is, in fact, the essence of luminosity. Luminosity refers to the nature of mind, and the nature of mind is the same as the Buddha nature. So, so the understanding of the nature of mind covers all the different topics and all the different approaches that are mentioned in the Guhyagarbha Tantra. So who is qualified is first and foremost, or especially, anyone who is able to receive introduction to their nature of mind. And this means particularly introduction at the level of the so-called fourth empowerment. So in the empowerments according to the Anuttara or highest yoga tantra, and that includes Maha, Anu, and Ati yoga in the Nyingma system. The fourth empowerment is the fourth stage of an empowerment ritual, where mind nature or Buddha nature is indicated directly, not usually by, for example, taking a substance like water or hearing the sound of a mantra, but rather using words alone or symbolic indications like a crystal, a peacock feather, a mirror, and so on. These symbols or simple words and explanations are used to directly indicate nature of mind to the student. So the guru tells you, this is your nature, this is your true nature. And if the circumstances of the empowerment are auspicious and the disciples are fortunate, and also the guru is properly qualified, then one will have a glimpse of that nature during the empowerment. Or subsequent to the empowerment, one will notice that there's an enhanced level of understanding and confidence regarding the teaching. So someone who is able to approach a teacher, receive empowerment, and have that kind of very positive experience is ipso facto qualified. And on the subject of the qualifications of the disciple, I wanted to point out that at least according to the Hatha Yoga or Dzogchen tantras, that there are two types of individual, or two types of person who are especially well qualified. The first type is, you could say, is like Forrest Gump, someone who is basically a simpleton, but doesn't have an evil or mean-spirited bone in his body or her body. Someone who isn't sophisticated, but is genuinely good. Someone who is able to follow instructions and repeat back whatever is told to them. They're smart enough to repeat back what is told to them, but they're not smart enough to make clever mistakes or to rebel. In other words, they're able to follow, but even without wanting to be a leader, they may also be capable of leading. I'm thinking again of Forrest Gump. He's a classic example. Someone like Forrest Gump, if that person existed, would make an excellent candidate for empowerment into the secret mantra Vajrayana. just because they have a personality that is able to follow the instructions and has no intellectual complications whatsoever.
Yes, it's pure.
Above and beyond that, the person has to understand bodhicitta.
Yes.
That means they have to be able to generate the aspiration to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, and they have to be able to practice the virtues of the Mahayana: generosity and patience, discipline, patience, concentration, and wisdom. But those disciplines are available, especially through the medium of the secret mantra Vajrayana. Even a simpleton, but I mean a special kind of simpleton, like Forrest Gump, for example, could practice all of those and would be a great candidate. That's one type of person. I think persons like this, there may be many such people, but because they're simple and possibly even illiterate, we would never know who they are because they don't show off at all. They have no ego to begin with. They have no ego and they have no pretense. So as abundant as sorry, you're going to say?
I was going to say the teachers, the great teachers, they can immediately realize who they are.
Who they are, yes.
I believe the great teachers, they immediately can realize who they are. We ordinary beings, we can't.
There are stories like this in like the 84 Mahasiddhas, and I believe there's a story like this in the Namtar, the biography of the great Kensei. I believe it was the great Kensei, but I may be mistaken. But I read this a long time ago, and I think it was the life of the great Kensei as told by Orgyen Topgel Rinpoche. But according to, that may be the source, but regardless, the great Kensei was giving an empowerment, and somebody asked, did anybody here today successfully receive the empowerment? And supposedly, according to this anecdote, which I'm probably oversimplifying, or the details might be mistaken, but the basic point is this. Lama, the great famous Lama, said, yes, only one person, and that person is seated all the way in the back of the audience. Let's imagine it was, like the Rinchen Terzo empowerments. There are thousands of people there, and there's someone all the way in the back who can't even hear or understand what's going on. But because that person was a very simple herdsman, like a yak herder, illiterate person, but someone with great faith, was present and was properly focused on the ceremony, could receive the highest level of empowerment automatically, without understanding any of the details. And that, again, this refers to especially to the introduction of the nature of mind. So someone who has the right state of mind could receive it like that.
Incredible.
But I'm just saying, historically, that's one story which I heard from either from reading a transcript or from actual teachings. So again, this is the first type. The second kind of person is someone that we're more familiar with. It could be, on a good day, it could be me, or it could be you. And that's someone who is very bright, someone who is motivated, someone who even could be ambitious or competitive by nature. I mean, not necessarily, but sometimes smart kids, we are taught or we are brainwashed to be competitive, to be ambitious. But if we have good roots of virtue from a previous life, then also we might be altruistic and attracted to the teachings of Dharma and to Mahayana Buddhism. And so someone who is very smart, analytical, resourceful, persistent, that kind of person also is a good candidate for these teachings. But I did want to mention that if one could choose between being a simpleton like Forrest Gump or being a very smart, ambitious person, the correct choice perhaps would be Forrest Gump. And the reason is that someone like Forrest Gump, because he's in a way too simple and too pure to make the wrong choice. People who are extremely clever and ambitious or competitive can easily be deceived by temptations and by their own ego and will tend to make more mistakes. But
Yes.
because they're intelligent, if they follow the teachings and don't break their connection with their root teacher, they can recognize their mistakes and they can correct. They can self-correct.
Yeah.
So, so both types of individual would be considered the best qualified. And then in between those two are persons of more average ability. They may not be the best candidate, but anyone who has the right motivation and a good luck of having a connection with a great teacher automatically is qualified.
Thank you for clarifying the requisites to practice this Tantra. I particularly enjoyed and feel very happy to hear the story of the Forrest Gump and the gentleman that was in the last line saying, I did. That's really inspiring. You know, I really like this kind of things. So may I keep going and ask the next one?
Please do.
Okay, so it is beneficial to teach this Tantra publicly. Can it harm or benefit beings, Dr. John?
Well, here's my personal opinion. I think I've already said or implied that the full extent of these teachings cannot be given too openly or to anyone without discrimination. Or if they were, it would be perhaps it would be a waste of time. First of all, because many people, the general public, wouldn't understand in the first place. Secondly, because the general public doesn't have the spiritual training of mind that is required to enter the secret mantra Vajrayana. For the general public, and especially in terms of Mahayana Buddhism, I wanted to say that this is the Guhyagarbha Tantra is the highest level of the teachings of the so-called Anuttara or highest yoga tantra. So in the teachings of highest yoga tantra, all of the most powerful and also potentially dangerous methods of practice are taught. For example, so-called sexual yoga, which is a very advanced and difficult practice. Very few people are even capable of doing it, much less understand. I mean, people think they understand it, but that's just because everybody loves sex. But actually, most people aren't even capable of understanding theoretically how it works. Actually, physically being able to practice is also rare. So this is a teaching of highest yoga tantra, and therefore, because people can easily think they understand, for example, the use of sexual energy. Their sexual energy or libido is a precious source of motivation for people on a spiritual path. But using it at the highest level of utility is restricted only to a very few people. So therefore, teachings that give all of the necessary methods and all the necessary clues for that sort of practice are not given openly. Many people claim to teach so-called sexual tantra, but from the Buddhist standpoint, very few of those people are really teaching that. On the other hand, in terms of approaching tantra, even in the Mahayana Sutras, and this is something this is a point that's made in the commentary of Nippon Rinpoche on the Guhyagarbha. His commentary makes the point that many of the topics or methods that are taught in the Guhyagarbha Tantra are also taught in a certain way, in a limited way, in the Mahayana Sutras. So, for example, according to the Mahayana Sutras, bodhisattvas, that means people who are genuinely motivated by great compassion to reach Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, they engage with objects of the senses. A genuine bodhisattva or someone who is really truly aspiring in the right way to become a bodhisattva can engage in business, can have a family, or have sexual relationships, can enjoy food and drink like an ordinary person. But again, it all comes down to, are they disciplined? Are they authentic? Are they sincere? And are they free of self-deception? Then that bodhisattva, without being an actual initiate of Tantra, if they are that kind of person, they can do those things. And it's a legitimate style of existing in the world as a bodhisattva. I'll name, for example, the late Alan Watts, for example. I don't think he was an initiate of Tantra. And he was a drinker, and he was a womanizer, but in spite of those flaws or addictions, he was much loved, and he really was brilliant, and he was definitely very sincere. His interest in Buddhism, his understanding of Buddhism was very genuine and sincere. So, nowadays, someone like Alan Watts would probably get sued and be subject to a great deal of bad publicity. But even though today we would sue, as many people, I wouldn't, but some people might want to condemn him for his hedonistic lifestyle. But if you read his books, it's clear that he had very good qualities at the same time. So I'm just citing him as an example of a kind of bad boy bodhisattva, And also, if you read the Vimalakirti Sutra, the aristocrat Vimalakirti, he was a wealthy man. He frequented casinos and brothels, and he also was well acquainted with the teachings of non-Buddhist teachers, so-called heretics or tirtikas. He was familiar with those teachings, and he was also well liked outside the Buddhist community. He was very highly respected by worldly people and also by spiritual people. And the reason was that he was a great bodhisattva. Some people, like my professor Robert Thurman, think that Vimalakirti was secretly a mantra practitioner. I think that's probably true. But even at the level of the Mahayana Sutra teaching, it is possible that someone like Vimalakirti would exist. So if someone like Vimalakirti were to encounter a guru teaching the Guhyagarbha, he would be the ideal candidate. because already he's mastered the view and the meditation, the practice of Mahayana.
Yes. I'm very happy that you brought Alan Watts' example also, because there is a big, how can I say, how do you say, prejudice? Yeah, a big prejudice. Sorry for my English. A big prejudice about some things, like if you drink or if you smoke or if you enjoy or if you are this and that. People have a lot of concepts, and immediately they put a label on you. They judge you. And many times, for example, like you were saying about Alan Watts, he was really amazing. It was overwhelming. It was amazing. I think he understood a lot of concepts that the Buddhist community don't really understand. And as you said, he was a humanizer. He drink, he smoke, he this and that. You see, and many people put labels on him, and by many he will be looked like, oh, this guy, he smoke, he drinks, he's not welcome here. But his heart and the way he perceived things and what he did for sentient beings is really incredible. So I think this is also a very good example you give, so people don't have so much concepts and don't put so much labels and don't have so much prejudice.
And just on that note, and this is not according to the Guhyagarbha Tantra, but just according to the teachings of the Mahayana Sutras.
Yes.
That there are 10 levels of bodhisattva stages, right? And at the first level, that's when someone has direct realization of emptiness. So at the level of the first bhumi, or the first ground of the 10 bodhisattva grounds, the 11th ground is the Buddhahood itself. At the first level, the bodhisattva is able to directly perceive or to hear and to see Buddhas and other realms of existence. So they have some visionary capacity, and also they have they are completely beyond any possible doubt or hesitation regarding the true nature of reality, which is emptiness. And also that means emptiness also means the luminosity nature of mind, according to according to some Mahayana sutras and according to the teachings of Tantra, mantra. This luminous nature of mind and emptiness, they're the same. So that's the first level of bodhisattva. But until the 8th stage, bodhisattvas are still experiencing afflictive emotions. That means emotions like anger or irritability, pride, lust, jealousy, and confusion. They still have these emotions. But at the first level, up till the end of the 7th level, at the time of meditation or samadhi, they're able to see their true nature directly. But it takes a long time on a bodhisattva path to eliminate all of the possibility of afflictive emotions. And while the bodhisattva is practicing, he or she makes use of those emotions as fuel for the fire of wisdom. They have to use those emotions, and they have to use, because emotions keep us connected with other sentient beings, right? Sometimes the connection is good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's based on anger, sometimes it's based on desire. So, I mean, when it's based on desire, it seems like a good connection. When it's based on anger, it seems like a bad connection. But actually, all connections for a bodhisattva are positive because they keep us connected. And also, for a bodhisattva has to face their own faults and work with that. So the point is that the reason why the teachings of the Guhyagarbha Tantra exist at all is because there are ordinary sentient beings that have the so-called 5 poisons: anger, pride, lust, jealousy, and confusion. And as long as those poisons exist, then there's also fuel for the Mahayana path, the gradual Mahayana path, or the very quick and dangerous path of secret mantra.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
I think that there's a very widespread assumption, and it's a misconception based on lack of proper learning about the Buddhist teachings. But there's an assumption that someone who is quote unquote realized, or someone who is quote unquote exalted, like someone who has the name of Rinpoche or Tulku, or someone who is a great teacher, very, very charismatic, and so on. The assumption is that person can never make a mistake, or that they don't have any human flaws. I mean, of course, when it comes to Guru Yoga, we have to imagine our Guru is a perfectly awakened Buddha. But the reality is, the practical reality is, that even very highly advanced people still have some flaws. They still make some mistakes. But what sets them apart from other people is that they can correct those mistakes, and they can purify and work with every situation that arises, even very, very negative situations. That's what makes a person a great yogi or a great practitioner. Whereas an average person, as soon as very difficult, confusing, emotionally disturbing circumstances arise, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. And so that's why, instead of Tantra, for most people, the best approach is very basic, simple Buddhism.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you for saying that. And this has not particularly to do with the Guhyagarbha Tantra, but it's very important what you mentioned about the misunderstanding of people because somebody is a Tulku or a Rinpoche or a high level teacher. He cannot be a human being. It's like people don't want to see them as human beings. They want to see like saints. They cannot move. They must be perfect. And this is also a big burden to the teachers. Like they look like they have to behave according to people's expectations. They cannot fail. They cannot have, feel anger. They cannot feel this. This is terrible. And because also in Buddhism, we see so many people repressing emotions instead of working directly, taking this full and bring the emotion out and directly work with it and transform it. Transform the poison into the medicine, right?
Yeah, we see someone who sits on a throne and who seems to have very, very good conduct, and we imagine that somehow, if we can imitate that will suffice as a practice. But actually, the only way to practice is to be yourself. As imperfect as we are, we have to see ourselves as we are and accept ourselves as we are and work with that, and don't expect any don't expect any fireworks or
Right.
any grandiose exalted states of being. We have to be very down to earth, and in fact that's how all of the great lamas, they're all very, very humble. Even the greatest
Yes,
of the great,
absolutely.
their humility. Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche was incredibly humble. He one time he was giving a teaching and he said, someone like me who has not even entered the first stage of the path of accumulation, and at the time I thought, how can he say that? I mean, there's no way he could do what he does if he had not even entered the beginning of the path of accumulation. I mean, as a scholar, I know that it can't literally be true, but I understand now that I think that uh,
Yeah.
Rinpoche's good qualities as a human being, I can't say about his practice, but as a human being, his compassion and his devotion to helping others was so great that he could never imagine that he was better than anyone else. He could
Yeah,
never
yeah.
imagine that he was superior to another person. He had that much compassion, that much humility. So, so even though literally maybe it wasn't true, but for him it was true, and that's a
Mm.
paradox. How could he imagine that he was such a nobody, uh, and yet still be such a great master? How is this possible? I mean, for many years I've been contemplating that aspect of his personality, and I mean, not all lamas are so humble. Some great lamas who are
Yes, that's
tertons,
true.
who are mahasiddhas, they brag about what they understand, and if you get to know them enough, you realize that they have bragging rights. They have a right to brag because actually they do have incredibly powerful capacity. Um,
Yes, but you give a wonderful example of humbleness. That was His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse, and for me also, Shatta Rinpoche was a great example of humbleness. And wow.
one of your questions is, who's qualified or who can receive the teachings on the
Yes,
Guhyagarbha. Along
yes,
with that is the question of who is qualified to give them. Someone who's
yes,
supremely learned and is supremely disciplined as a practitioner, but who is also extremely humble and kind. That's the best kind of
yes.
teacher. Not,
That's
it's not the,
absolutely true.
it's not the only kind of teacher. Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche pointed out once when he was interviewed that there are many great masters, but not all of them are
Yeah.
as good human being or as kind in every circumstance as Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche. Um,
Yes.
but there are still many great masters who maybe in terms of personality, they don't stand as the equal of Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche. But it doesn't mean that
Yes.
they are not great masters. Some
Absolutely.
people need to be subject to a bit of harsh treatment or outrage from their teacher,
Yeah.
and others require a teacher who's incredibly refined and gentle. Actually,
Yes.
Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was also that way. He was incredibly refined and gentle. People think, oh, yeah, Trungpa Rinpoche was a drinker and he had so many girlfriends, but actually, his manners were superb. He was a very well-mannered person and had a very good nature. He was not a harsh person. When
Yes.
the harshest thing he ever did was to be silent and serious, and then he scared the hell out of people when he didn't say anything and didn't smile, and people were terrified of him then.
I can imagine. That's really interesting because, different people, different needs, different teachers. But the point is the level of realization of the teachers like Delkhinse Rinpoche, Shatta Rinpoche shows us that, for example, they were qualified to give the Guhyagarbha Tantra, to teach the Guhyagarbha Tantra. And maybe they will say, I don't know nothing. I'm not ready for this. Or, maybe they were the first to say something very humble. And in our days, it's quite complicated to find people like that. I think it also has to do with the evolution of times and the different of culture, modernization of things. And I don't know. And also because people, I don't know, learn a bit and they think they already, you know, are encyclopedias, and they already pass all over the stages of this and that and that. And I think we should, even if you, I believe in Vajrayana, even if we knew a bit, we don't know nothing. It's very vast. And especially
that
if you go to the yogas, the Dzogchen, this is extremely vast and is extremely through direct experience. So I think
and see,
humbleness is
from the
really one
standpoint,
of the best qualities, in my opinion. It's incredible.
of course it is, and I think that that coming from the perspective of someone like myself or yourself, being educated, being well traveled, meeting many great people, great practitioners, and great lamas, and being fortunate to hear teachings on how to practice and understanding them, and then practicing. We both of us are very lucky this way, even if we don't know very much. But what we've been able to understand comes from reliable sources and from authentic
Yeah.
people. And with the added perspective of having traveled and having done some pilgrimage, and having also formed a personal relationship with certain great teachers, actually knowing
Yes.
them in a personal, face-to-face way. This is very, very lucky, and not everyone is so fortunate. But because again, because of the conditions of the world, this is the Kali Yuga. Sometimes
Yes.
it's said that in the Krita Yuga, or the Golden Age, the first age, that the teachings of the highest Yoga Tantra were not needed, or were perhaps not even taught then. And why is that? Because in the Golden Age, people's affliction was much less. In a very enlightened society, let's say a wealthy, affluent society, a civilized, well-educated society, with a bare minimum or a complete absence of injustice and persecution of people and so on. In other words, in a society that's truly happy and balanced, then the strong, dangerous emotions, the anger, the jealousy, the pride, and so on. These kinds of emotions don't arise so much. And likewise, lust and confusion, intense desire or intense confusion, like, for example, mental illness, depression, or bipolar disorder, and so on. These are examples of intense confusion.
Absolutely.
And so, in a very balanced, fortunate time and place and society, the teachings of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, which are addressed to people that suffer or who have very powerful emotions, they might not be necessary. I'm not saying they wouldn't be useful at all, but they wouldn't be
Yeah.
as necessary as they are now. The reason
Yes.
why the so-called dangerous and advanced approaches are necessary is because we actually live in a time when the world is a dangerous place emotionally.
Yes.
The emotional condition of beings is dangerous, and the ripening
Really.
of previous karma in society is also very advanced. We're constantly at the brink of destroying ourselves as a species. This is why these dangerous or in some cases controversial methods are necessary. As much as
Yes.
they are appropriate now, it doesn't make them any less controversial or dangerous. But we have to
Yes.
understand that we live in a controversial and dangerous world. We live in a world that's, to put it bluntly, it's full of evil. There are many evil people in the world, and the temptations to be that way are also very great. So, there's a possibility that by applying more advanced methods, if we have the right motivation and the right teacher and the right opportunity, it
Yes.
might work.
Yes.
It will work for some people. It might be a disaster for others.
Yes. Unfortunately, that is true. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will go to the next question, because you clarify about if it is beneficial and if it can harm or not. The next question, this is like The Secret Essence Tantra reveals an important turn within Buddhist thought, a shift from the Buddha nature or the Tathagata, am I right? The universal potential for enlightenment to the secret nature, that is the Guhyagarbha. So, the affirmation of universal enlightenment right now, can you kindly give us a view or your view about this point, please?
Well, yes. So, there are many different levels of understanding of this term in English, Buddha nature. Actually, there are many different technical terms in Sanskrit or Tibetan that would be covered by the English word Buddha nature. There is actually no translation from English Buddha nature back into Tibetan or Sanskrit, because our word Buddha nature is a cover term. And the actual topic of so-called Buddha nature is complex, and the terminology is also diversified. But the general word for Buddha nature is Tathagata Garbha, or the nucleus or the potential of a Tathagata. That means someone who has gone to thusness. In other words, a Buddha, an enlightened being. So the potential for Buddhahood is called Tathagata Garbha, or also it's called sometimes, it's also called Buddhagarbha. Buddha. And the nature of that Tathagata Garbha is taught in different ways and in different Mahayana sutras. And based on those different Mahayana sutras and the way they have been interpreted by Indian and Tibetan masters, there are at least two levels of interpretation or understanding what Buddha nature means. One of those styles of interpretation is called the tradition of study and reflection. That means from the scholastic point of view, and for someone who is well-versed in Madhyamika philosophy particularly, then we understand that the Madhyamika, we understand that the Tathagata Garbha is the same as shunyata, or emptiness. And that the Tathagata Garbha as shunyata, or emptiness, means that basically it means that no reality, no being, a sentient being or an enlightened being, has a fixed, unchangeable nature. Everything is only designated in terms of cause and effect and interdependence. So a sentient being has this Buddha nature or Tathagata Garbha because they have the potential to become a Buddha. And why can they become a Buddha? Because nothing truly exists. Sentient beings do not really exist, and Buddhas also don't really exist. This very distinction itself is a limited point of view that only sentient beings make this distinction. That Buddhas don't see a difference between themselves and sentient beings. They don't have this this idea, which is based on, one thing is good and the other is bad. One thing is pure and the other is impure. Those are concepts of sentient beings. So for sentient beings have the Tathagata Garbha because they can go to the place where there is no longer that distinction between samsara and nirvana, between Buddhas and sentient beings. So that's the basic, you can say, academic or intellectual approach to understanding Buddha nature. The way I've explained it is oversimplified in a way, but basically that's what it amounts to. Now, the other tradition of interpretation of Buddha nature is called the tradition of meditation, or gomluk in Tibetan. The bhavana in Sanskrit is the word for gom, or meditation.
Bhavana.
And bhavana literally means, if you look at the etymology coming from the word bu, which means to be or to be possible, bhavana means making possible or making something real. And so meditation means making real or making manifest something which is merely at the level of a potential. Now, the question is, when we meditate on our Buddha nature, which means at the Sutrayana level, it means meditating on emptiness and prajnaparamita. Emptiness, not just emptiness alone, but the perfection of wisdom teachings in all of their vastness, that's the proper subject of meditation in the Mahayana. When we meditate on the Prajnaparamita, and also the sutras which teach the extensive version of Mahayana, that means all of the implications of Prajnaparamita, all the implications of the Bodhisattva path, of the 10 bhumis and so on, the 10 powers, the 18 special qualities of a Buddha and so on. When we meditate on those, then we eventually, through the accumulation of merit, we manifest the qualities of Buddhahood. But the question here is, are those qualities already present in the Tathagata Garbha? Does the Garbha actually have, is it more than a potential? Is it like a, you can say, I mean, the word Garbha means germ, right? If you take a peanut and you soak it in water, a raw peanut, eventually it will sprout. But even before it sprouts, if you split a peanut in half, you can see there's 2 little leaves inside the peanut, and beside the 2 halves, there's this one little thing that looks like a leaf. It's called a cotyledon, and actually that will become the first leaf of the peanut plant. So the peanut plant, at least in an embryonic form, exists already inside the seed. So the question is it more than a potential? Is it like actually the Buddha is already there in your Buddha nature? Is the Dharmakaya or Rupakaya, even the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya, are these 3 kayas already present in the Buddha nature? Are the 10 powers of a Buddha already present? The 18 idiosyncrasies, the 8 fearlessnesses, and so on, are they already part and parcel, or are they simply a potential? And so the tradition of meditation, the interpretation which is called the Gomluk, or tradition of meditation, says, tends to say, I mean, there's many different degrees of interpretation here, but basically, yes, actually these qualities of Buddhahood already are present. And the reason why they're already present in our Buddha nature is because actually, from the Buddhist point of view, Buddhas and sentient beings are not different. You know, from the Buddhist point of view, samsara and nirvana are indivisible. They're like 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a sentient being without also having a Buddha. You can't have samsara without also nirvana existing already. So the point is that these dichotomies of Buddha versus sentient being, samsara versus nirvana, purity versus impurity, you know, higher realm versus lower realm, you know, all of these distinctions are only the distorted and confused phenomena of sentient beings. Buddha has none of those, and because Buddha has none of those, that fact of Buddha being free of those distinctions, that is the reality. That's the only reality. The only true reality is Buddha's reality. The reality of sentient beings is temporary and confused. The point of view of Buddha has never changed. It's always been what it is. The only thing is that, you know, from our limited linear time perspective, somebody starts out as an ordinary person, goes through the path, reaches enlightenment. It seems like they've transformed, they've become someone different. Actually, the only difference is that they didn't see the truth before, and later they saw the truth. So, so this is the, especially in the Kagyu and Nyingma traditions, this latter interpretation is considered to be the more definitive, the more complete interpretation of Buddha nature. So if that is the case, that being the case, let's just assume for the sake of argument that it's true. If it's true, then we ought to be able to base our practice on that reality. Even if we didn't realize it, there are symbolic ways, the use of mantra, the use of visualization, the use of ritual, and especially the use of empowerment itself. The use of empowerment is just a way to, it's like, you can say, it's like hypnotic suggestion. You know, I place this vase on your head, I give you some saffron water to drink, and that is the empowerment of Buddha's body. It purifies your body. And actually, since, you know, ultimately the body of sentient beings and the body of the Buddha are not separate, we can say at the level of appearance, they're different. At the level of true nature, they're not different. So we can use these methods. And so, you know, the methods of Vajrayana understood this way, it's not fantasy. And it's not mere suggestion or hypnotic suggestion. It actually is true. It's actually true when we say, now your body is purified, or you actually have this nature of Buddha. It's from Buddhist point of view, it's literally true. So the Guhyagarbha Tantra is based on that idea. It's based on the idea that Buddhahood already exists. It's a timeless reality. It's a natural state. It's not artificial, and it's not temporary or accidental.
Incredible. It's just that it uses methods and techniques that are very advanced and are not for all the practitioners, are only for those who really have the preparation to follow and understand and have the view also.
Yes. And also, as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and Dzogchen Khyentse Rinpoche have said in various ways, and maybe not in so many words, but they've both commented that when you practice according to the higher approaches, that means it's true in Mahayana, but especially true in Vajrayana, that we should expect that the apple cart of our life will be upset. When you upset an apple cart, the apples go rolling all over the place. The apples are bruised. People will steal them. The police might give you a ticket for creating an obstruction in the street if you upset your apple cart. And so, the idea is that when you take a powerful approach towards awakening, that the orderly and so-called normal, diluted state of your existence will be precipitated into a state of turmoil and chaos. That tends to happen. And so, while it's very nice to say that sentient beings are already Buddhas, that the nature of mind is pure luminosity or dharmakaya, and that there's no difference between samsara and nirvana, if we actually practice as though that were true, even if we practice correctly, there will be trouble.
Yes.
Because,
I will say something before you say if we practice. If you understand that. You cannot practice if you don't understand that. Is my opinion. I don't know if I'm saying totally stupid.
My opinion is even if you don't understand, but if you have a good teacher and someone to guide you, then with understanding little or nothing about it, if you do as the teacher says, then gradually you'll begin to understand. But you might have to go through hell before you really truly feel self-confident.
Do you believe it's easy for a person to understand that the nature of mind is clear light?
I think if one has an excellent teacher, like as in the case of the words of my perfect teacher, right? If you have a perfect teacher in the sense that they're perfectly kind and perfectly skillful, then yes. But you have to trust. Exactly, you have to trust that person. You really have to believe that your teacher is not there to manipulate you, and of course they have to be genuine. They can't be in it for their own personal ego or personal gain. They're only doing it because they took a vow to benefit sentient beings, and that's the only reason why they accept you as an imperfect human being as a disciple, is because they have to say yes. It's not a matter of personal choice even for them.
Yes.
And if you have a teacher, if you trust your teacher as that kind of person, then I think yes, even a very confused, deluded person can see the nature of mind. Maybe we only see this much first, but if we don't give up too easily, seeing this much could imply this much trouble and disturbance. For example, if you see this much, but you're married to someone who doesn't even want to see this much, then seeing this much can create a lot of trouble, because suddenly you no longer have so much in common with your life partner or your family or your parents or your children. Conflicts can arise because you see something that they don't see. They don't respect the changes that will come about in you. They don't believe you if you try to say something about your practice. They feel cheated because you're suddenly very devoted to meditation and to following lamas, but you don't want to shower them with ordinary flattery and gifts and engage in so many trivial, useless activities with them, you know. So.
Yes, that is true. Very true. That's a very good point. That is very true. My
Don't we
last
know it?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm just saying, don't we know it? You and I both, I think, have experienced how seeing even this much, just a tiny bit, can provoke all kinds of changes in ourselves, and also, you know, a radical reevaluation of relationships.
Yes, that is true. It's just that you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, you know, this kind of tantra and this kind of teaching. You need to receive empowerment, you need to do the sadhana, you need to receive the lung and the explanation in order to understand. And this kind of tantra involves certain practices, for example, like union. And unfortunately, this is something that in our days, it's really very, very misunderstanding, you know. And I think people don't see this kind of thing as sacred, and they make this kind of issue totally banalized. And they think, oh, I want to study. There are two factors. They want to study certain tantras because of the name, very fancy name, Guhyagarbha. Oh, this is wow, you know, like, wow, this must be very, you know, very intense, very, it's just by the name, you know. It's like when you buy a Calvin Klein bag. Wow, you know, Guhyagarbha, wow. And then you know that with this tantra, you can go to this kind of practice. Wow, you can imagine, right?
The appeal of so-called union, which means consort practice, or
Yes,
the use of sexual energy with a physical partner. You know, this obviously the appeal of this approach relates to the fact that that practically everyone loves sex, and you know, the more we love it, or the more attached we are to it, the more
that's like
powerful that.
alcohol.
Well, yes, I mean, but you know,
You
it's
know,
even. I
everybody
mean,
loves, but not everybody knows how to do. And
that's
everybody
not
loves
everybody.
alcohol, but not
Not
everybody knows how to
everybody
do.
can. Not everybody can hold their liquor as well as everyone else. Some people can drink a tremendous amount without ever really being addicted to it. Others, they just drink a little bit, and their behavior goes crazy, and their addiction goes wild almost immediately. I mean, I think most of us know at least one or two people, even in high school, by the age of 14 or 15, already seem to be rather serious alcoholics at that age. Um,
Exactly.
but but be that as it may, whether you know whether a person has addictive tendencies or not, you know, the use of sexual energy and other types of sensual pleasure is
Yes,
a powerful
yes, it
way,
is.
but it isn't the highest approach in tantra.
Yes,
The highest approach in tantra is like following the teachings of Namkhe Norbu Rinpoche, for example. He identifies it as self-liberation. Self-liberation requires, first of all, you have to have a great teacher who's an excellent Dzogchen master. That means they're an advanced Dzogchen meditator. They're particularly good at maintaining the natural state of luminosity and freedom
yes,
from disturbing emotions, freedom from confusion, by the simplest, most direct approach, which relates to the nature of mind. You have to find a teacher who's capable of that, first of all.
yeah,
And secondly, you have to uh, receive introduction to mind nature, and on occasion, further instructions in your
yeah,
meditation practice from that kind of teacher. That is actually the highest approach. Now, some people, I think that there are some people who are following the secret mantra Vajrayana these days who are capable of practicing that way. But
mm,
because of what their friends say, or because of what the legendary, you know, secret conduct of yogis says, like
yes,
the stories about great yogis, because of the culture of Tibetan Vajrayana or even Indian Vajrayana. They believe that practicing with a partner is a higher or better approach. But actually, it's only a better approach if you can really make use of it properly. If you can't make use of it, or if you don't have the right instruction, or if your practice is insufficient, then it's not a better approach. It's only a better approach for people. First of all, for some people, it is the only approach. Some people don't have access to the right Dzogchen teacher, and maybe they don't have the type of devotion or the type of intellect that goes along with Dzogchen practice. So some people may not be for some people, the practice of Tsalung, that means of the energy yogas and so on.
Yes.
Along with that, for a subset of people who can do good Tsalung practice, some of those people, but not all of them, can practice very well with a partner. And some of those who practice very well with a partner, some of them may become great siddhas, and then they'll have many partners, many karma mudras. And all of those partners of that man or woman who has sexual partners, all of those partners will be blessed by that connection. And it becomes a very positive thing, and it's very powerful. It is possible, but...
I'm not saying, I'm just laughing because many people fantasize with this thing, like many concerts, many... This is the problem.
It's
I'm
just
not
like,
laughing what you are saying. I'm laughing because many people fantasize with this thing,
Well, this is, people fantasize about this topic for the same reason that, boys or girls when they're 14 or 15 want to be a rock and roll star, because actually the life of a rock and roll star is similar to that. It's not the same, but, there's a lot of sex and a lot of partners, and seemingly there's no harm in it, right? There's seemingly no harm, but actually, being under the control of desire is always, there's always potential for harm. There's on the one hand, somebody's heart is going to get broken sooner or later. That's the ordinary possibility. Also, there's sexually transmitted diseases. And then there's also the possibility that rather than gain merit through practicing a union properly, one simply uses up this life's merit by experiencing pleasure, but one is not actually realizing anything. One can imagine that one has realized something, but actually nothing is realized necessarily. It really depends on the person and their practice.
Yes, that is
so.
True.
I think that when it comes to the topic of so-called union, as powerful as it is, and there's different levels at which it could be beneficial for a person. Just having the affections of another human being is generally, it's good for psychological and physical health. That's not the same as union, but they're benefits, and having an intimate partner who is also, if they support your practice but don't practice, then that's also good. If they also practice, have a similar approach, that's even better. But sometimes that happens, and then suddenly the relationship becomes very ordinary, and the attachment becomes very ordinary. Then the ordinary trouble and emotional constriction that comes from slowly separating from your partner, but without willing to admit that the time together is a natural end. And people don't want to admit, so then they have to force themselves back together. But this requires a lot of psychological repression and manipulation. But this is a possible pitfall even for people that don't practice union in a frivolous way. In other words, there are many things there are many limitations involved with the approach. There are many pitfalls. The worst pitfalls probably won't apply to everyone, only to certain individuals. But it's just like in an ordinary relationship. There's so many ways you can lie to yourself or lie to the other person. Lie about your feelings, lie about your practice. If you lie to yourself about your practice and lie to another person about your practice, already the sacred bond is destroyed by that. But people don't realize that they've destroyed it by being dishonest and by deceiving themselves. So
absolutely,
these are all just trivial examples of how things can go wrong with this approach. So that's the reason why, especially for his Western disciples, my root teacher, the previous Dingla Khyentse Rinpoche, always emphasized Guru Yoga and devotion, because if you have a great teacher and you have excellent devotion and you practice the Guru Yoga, then you can be free very quickly, just by practicing Ngondro and Guru Yoga. A person can be liberated. They can reach the stage of Vidyadhara. Several high lamas have said that, literally said that to me, and I'm sure it's true. I'm sure it's true. I think this is true for many Tibetan people. You know, amongst Tibetan couples, for example, I'll give you an example. You know, I know a lama who lives in Darjeeling. He's over 90 years old now, and he was a long-time student of Chatal Rinpoche. And when he was a young man, he was a bad boy. You know, he was connected to many women. He used to drink a lot. And eventually, he had to, about the time I met him, he had to give up drink because of his ulcer. But he was still kind of a wild yogi, a party guy, like a frat boy yogi, but a real yogi, you know, a real practitioner. And he was married to the same woman for about 40 years, in spite of being one of those wild yogis with different girlfriends and so on, and kind of a reputation. He was married to the same woman. They stayed together. And at the end of her life, they were living together in Darjeeling. She was never regarded as a practitioner. Unlike her husband, she never did 6 years of retreat. I don't think she was an avid student of the writings of Longchenpa. She wasn't a particularly religious person. But, you know, someone who was in close touch with this Lama Dawa, old Yomo Dawa, they call him. This friend of mine told me that according to his niece and nephew who were there when the wife passed away, that there were many signs of rainbow body. There were rainbow lights, there were unusual smells, there was the sound of music, and possibly, you know, some shrinkage of the body while she was in Tugdam. And most people didn't even regard her as a practitioner. You know, unlike her husband, she didn't make a great effort, and she wasn't known in the Ngakpa community of Kathmandu when she lived there with her or near her husband. She was never regarded as a special person, and you know, as far as I know, she didn't, you know, go to a great many rituals or make any show of her practice. So the point is that, you know, someone who has devotion, or even someone who just has the tremendous merit of serving their partner who is a practitioner, that person can also reach the highest of their life. I mean, who's to say?
That's true.
I think this is
that's I think this is a topic for another interview. It's very vast, it's very deep also. I just brought it for two reasons, because I think this Tantra is useful, and if people are going to read a bit or try to know a bit about the Guhyagarbha Tantra, they will go to that stage. They will realize you can reach that point, and they may feel very enthusiastic, but it's good to understand that it's not that easy, and it's not that simple.
I asked questions about this kind of practice a long time ago to some of my teachers, and the gist of the answer, aside from the question of qualifications of the consort, but the main thing is that one has to have very strong practice, and, like, for example, completing 500,000 ngondros minimum is a very good preparation. Then also, you know, committing several 100,000 mantra recitation, you know, the approach and accomplishment of a deity like Vajrayogini, Chakrasamvara, Vajrakilaya, or, you know, the Tsokye Tuktik in the Dujong Tersar tradition, you know, completing those practices and, you know, becoming very confident in the generation stage. Also, this is very necessary. If you have that much qualification.
As I said, it's not very easy to find a proper consort, either male or female, it doesn't matter. It is not easy. And I think the component of love, genuine connection, mind connection, that is the main point.
Yes, yes, of course. I failed to mention that.
Explain this. I'm nobody to explain, but it's connected mind to mind. This is extremely important, and that is what is very rare.
Yes, yes.
I don't know if I'm wrong. I'm just supposing.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. You know, I'll just say a little bit. There's a woman in my life that I was very close to for not a very long time. But yes, I mean, I would say we were certainly in love. But also, from her side, she was, I believed, and many people believed, and would still believe, that she's a great practitioner. And at some point, you just kind of in this sort of delirious state of rapture, and also being personally very impressed by her understanding. I realized that I was dealing with somebody who was much more advanced than myself, and not just in an intellectual way, but really in an experiential way. And I said something like, "Oh, you're such a great Dakini," and this is what ordinary practitioners will whisper in their girlfriend or boyfriend's ear. "You're such a great yogi," or "You're a tulku," or "You're a Dakini." People will say this. It's kind of like saying, "I love you." It's a tantric way of saying, "I love you. I respect you. I see you in a positive way." And I said something like this to her, and she shot right back with a response, which was, "Well, but you need to understand, how I can also just be a very ordinary woman."
Yeah.
And she was very insistent about that. And when she said that, I didn't know. I couldn't say a thing. I couldn't respond, because I realized that she had nailed me. That as much as I could say in a delirious moment of being intoxicated with
Yeah.
love and sake, I could say, "You're a great Dakini," but if I couldn't also understand in the same instant how she could also be an ordinary person, then somehow my view was still dualistic. And from that point onward, she needled me constantly and provoked me constantly with all kinds of difficult behavior to see if I was getting her point or not. So yes, love is necessary, but blissful, idealized love is just part of the package. We have the 5 poisons, and all of those come into play in a tantric relationship, whether it's a consort or a teacher. All of those 5 emotions are going to get stirred up.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I will finish this interview. We are already 2 hours. Can you imagine talking about this?
So, this is why, for example, the Gokensei Rinpoche, towards the end of his life, he said that the 7-point mind training was the most precious teaching that he ever received. He didn't say the 4 Nyingtig or the Guhyagarbha Tantra. He said the mind training, because if our minds are well trained, then we can progress into our practice. We can make use of more advanced methods. But without training the mind at the fundamental level, there's no way to successfully practice anything that is so-called advanced. So therefore, the most basic types of practice.
So I will close with the last question, okay? So how could we apply this Tantra or this teaching in our daily life? How can we apply the Guhyagarbha Tantra in our daily life? What do you think? Just by simple lines, appointments here.
Well, kind of along the lines of what I was just saying. First of all, in terms of our path, there's a preparation, a main practice, and a conclusion. That applies every time we sit down to practice. The preparation is refuge in bodhicitta. The main practice is whatever deity or whatever practice you're doing. Conclusion is dedication, aspiration, and auspicious prayers. That makes the practice complete, and it makes the merit indestructible. So first of all, keep those 3 in mind, because they apply to absolutely everyone. And secondly, I would say, find a great master. If you're not sure you met your root teacher yet, then pray to Guru Rinpoche and also to Buddha Shakyamuni. And if you can, do it some pilgrimage. For example, go to Bodha, light some candles, circumambulate the stupa 1,000 times at least, and then there's no question that you'll meet someone who is qualified, who is able to be your root teacher. So you need to find a guru, someone that you can truly look up to and can trust. And then speak to them personally and do whatever they say. If they don't want or cannot, if they don't want to or cannot give you the teaching on the Guhyagarbha Tantra, then you should still try to do what they say. If you really want the Guhyagarbha Tantra, you're going to have to ask a bunch of times. It's not something you get asking only one time. And you also may have to go to another or several teachers. So that's what I would say to anybody. I mean, I'm being thorough. You know, some people may be very lucky; they just get it like that. They can hear the teachings and they maybe already have practice. Then it's easier for those people. But even if you're a complete beginner, if you do all the things I mentioned, definitely.
So let's go. Let's go.
You get,
yeah. Please.
No, I'm saying if you do all those things, you'll get the essence of the Guhyagarbha Tantra for sure.
I was going to say, to go to the ground zero, like how to find a suitable teacher, a genuine teacher, this and that. You can't read the words of my precious, perfect teacher. And there you have the explanation of Patrul Rinpoche, explaining detail by detail what is a good teacher, a genuine teacher. So I will go through the down, because many people never, ever, and this is something I get shocked. I see people doing Vajrakilaya, Kurkule, Vajrayogini, my sweet. And you say, did you read this? Oh, no, I didn't. So they don't know what are suitable pods. They don't know how to analyze a teacher. So how can they find a good teacher also? They also have to study a bit. So
yes,
just my 5 cents for those who are in the beginning, like what they are talking about, so advanced thing, you know, like doing this chorus and doing this, 500,000, they get immediately scared. At least read what is a genuine teacher according to Patrul Rinpoche. This is very important. Analyze your teacher for 12 years. I don't know
also,
if I'm saying
we're really using the Guhyagarbha Tantra as a symbol of the highest teaching. You know, the highest teaching can be given through the root text of the Tantra, through the commentary on the root text. I mean, the root text of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, in many places, it doesn't make very much sense without a commentary. But we can mean the root text, the commentary, or any system of practice which is based on the teachings of the Nyingma tradition, the Nyingma Tantras themselves. Any system of practice, anything from Kama, which is transmission, or Dharma, which is rediscovered teachings, anything can become the essence of the Guhyagarbha practice. The main thing is find the right teacher and also make the right kind of aspiration.
Yes, that's the point. Thank you so much, Dr. John, and thank you for your open mind to give those examples, talk openly about your private life and your own examples, your own experience. I think, teachings and books are very important, but direct experience is really something very, very important. And I'm very happy that you accept to do this interview and to talk about Guhyagarbha Tantra. That is not a very easy topic at all.
That's good, excellent point. And just as a corroboration, and quoting or paraphrasing the teaching of Dilgo Khyentse, the previous Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, you can be like a bee who goes from flower to flower and extract whatever nectar is available. And don't feel that you only have to go to one flower or one bush or one species of flower. You can go wherever it smells right. If it smells right and it feels right, then it is right.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. Thank you so much. So we close the topic with this beautiful sentence from previous Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, with all my respect to.
And also, I want to make the added aspiration that, especially by the blessing of Arya Tara and the 21 Taras, you know, that anyone who's listening, and especially on this, you know, controversial topic of union, it doesn't need to be so controversial. It can actually be quite
It's very
simple
simple.
and quite easy. But especially through the blessing of Tara, I hope everyone who aspires in that direction will find suitable companions and suitable teachers. You know, the blessing of Tara is really very good for your relationships of whatever kind. So just as a personal suggestion, but it's one I make, you know, very sincerely and with a lot of confidence, that, you know, if you pray to Tara for whatever it is that you want the most, you can have it. It's not that hard to do. If you want to feel safe and you want to feel secure, you want to be loved, and you want to experience bliss and joy, whether by yourself or with another person, then you know, even though it seems like a very simple practice, any practice of Tara or the 21 Taras is a good thing for you.
So can I humbly request you, if you can, pray the dedication, close this with the dedication prayer, and we dedicate this small talk with all the Mother Sentient Beings, and I would like to dedicate to Semo Saraswati, please, in this very special day, Dakini Day. I would like to dedicate for a long life.
I'm just going to read
a dedication prayer.
Okay, I'm going to read an aspiration and dedication of. It comes from the practice of Green Tara. I'm going to read this in English, but it covers everything. A venerable, compassionate Bhagavati, may I and all limitless sentient beings purify the two obscurations and quickly perfect the two accumulations. Please cause us to attain perfect Buddhahood. And all our succession of lives until this is attained, may we obtain the supreme joys of gods and men. Please quickly pacify and eliminate everything that is harmful and constitutes an obstacle to the accomplishment of omniscience, all demons, hindrances, epidemics, sicknesses, and so on, as well as all varieties of untimely death, bad dreams, bad omens, the 8 dangers, and so forth. Please cause an abundance of auspiciousness and good fortune to increase and flourish in this world and beyond, and may everything which is beneficial be accomplished effortlessly and spontaneously. May we be diligent in our practice. May the genuine Dharma spread. Always doing your practice, may we see your excellent face. May we realize the meaning of emptiness. May precious bodhicitta grow and increase like the waxing moon. In that excellent and joyful mandala of the victorious ones, may I be born from a beautiful, pure lotus, and actually receive a direct prophecy from the victor Amitabha. May there be the auspiciousness of the deity I have practiced in all my lives, the mother who is the activity of the Buddhas of the 3 times, the mother holding a Nutpala flower who is quick and heroic, green, with 1 face and 2 hands.